My name is Quentin Burgess, and I'm the Director of Communications with Music Canada. And if you're an up-and-coming artist, you should check out the Go Produce podcast.
Yes, yes, yes. Welcome back to another episode, SmArtist. Today we have Quentin Burgess. He is Music Canada's Director of Communications, where he is responsible for developing and overseeing the organization's communications and marketing strategies and for managing Music Canada's online development projects. Quentin has a technical background in music, previously working as a live sound technician out of London, Ontario, shout out London, Ontario, as well at sea on board Royal Caribbean cruise ships. Very interesting. He's a graduate of Fanshawe's College Music Industry Arts and Audio Post-Production Programs, and he is also a member of the Canadian Music Therapy Fund Board of Directors. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. SmArtist, join me in welcoming Quentin Burgess.
Hey. Thanks, Big Lou, for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Let's waste no more time and jump right into it. We're going to make the most of your time and start off with the basics. Grumpy did warn you at the beginning. He said he's going to play with your emotions, and that's one way he does so from the get-go. But what we're doing with the basics is we just want to understand you a little bit better, and one way to do that is by asking you, why did you choose music over anything else?
Yeah, sure. I guess going back to it, I fell in love with music in high school, like I think a lot of people do. And when I was listening to all my favorite bands back then, like Rage Against the Machine or Beastie Boys or, Jay-Z, it felt like all of my favorite artists were being produced by Rick Rubin, famed producer. And it was at that time that I just decided that I wanted to make a career out of this, looking to get into the studio side of things and be an engineer or a producer. And it was that time that I really fell in love with music. I loved just listening to the sounds of the song and trying to understand how they made the guitar sound just like that, or how they get the snare drum to have that, crisp crack, and just really dug into it and decided to try and make this my career. And that's when I started going on the direction of going to Fanshawe and studying as a producer engineer.
Very cool. What question would you ask Rick Rubin if you could?
Oh man, I don't know. I guess I would try and ask him if I could, borrow any of his Pro Tools sessions or his old tapes and just dig around in there, because I bet there are some very cool strings of plugins and compressors and everything like that he's used on those songs. And I would just love to kind of get in there and muck around and see if I can figure out how he makes those unique sounds.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely secrets to the trade. While at Fanshawe, what challenges did you experience as a student that, looking back, and you could have probably handled differently?
Let's see. I mean, I don't think I had too many challenges there. It was a lot of learning on the fly. I think if somebody has a background as a performer or as an artist, they have a real leg up in the studio side of things, because you already are familiar with all the music theory, and you're able to perform on your own tracks and things like that. One of the things I learned early on is I don't have the talent or the artistic background to be an artist myself, and that's why I wanted to go on to the producer engineer side of things.
Was that at MIA or before you even started there?
Yeah, that was at Fanshawe. I started kind of going down that route with a couple of co-op placements and things like that. So I guess if I could go back and prepare a little bit more, I think I would just try and get started earlier playing music, because having that foundation is great, not just for the studio producer technical side of things, but the music side, the business side of the music industry. Having that background is a real good foundation.
Interesting. I wouldn't have considered that. I mean, even just the interest of music alone could be enough, but an actual understanding of the musicality combined with the music is even stronger. So that is a great takeaway. Of all the lessons that you've learned in this industry so far. I'm sure you're still learning. But what was the first lesson that stuck out to you?
Um, I don't know if I would say it's the first one, but something that I learned early on, and try and try and continue to do to this day is, uh, I think I think this business is really about showing up and putting the work in. I I've been at Music Canada now for over a decade, and through my work, I've been able to interact with a lot of people in different parts of the business, whether it's at labels or publishers, artists themselves, the various collectives, and really everybody that I know in the music business is here because they're passionate about it. They're driven to be in the music industry, and that is often what makes them successful. So I'm not sure if that really answered your question, but that's kind of my takeaway. Like it's the opportunities in this business really go to the people who are in the room. So you got to be in the room. You got to put your best foot forward, and kind of chart your own path, because I don't think there's any straight line path in the music industry anymore. It's all about finding the doors and getting your foot open in that door when you can.
Literally stretching your creative powers. Yeah, find a way in and then finagle out the rest. Okay, so I like how you have to be passionate and you have to work. And if you're not passionate, you're obviously not going to work to the degree that you would typically need to find whatever kind of success you're looking for. Um, but with passion, you can easily trap individuals in a state where they think that they're working for passion, but now they're being abused because of how much they're willing to give. How do you avoid that? How do you navigate that world?
Yeah, I know what you're kind of referring to, and that's kind of the thing. There is a lot of people who love music and are passionate about it, and they want to make it their career. So there is a bit of a supply and demand component to it. And I found that after I left school and I was looking to break into the studio world, and I had done my couple of years at Fanshawe, graduated, and was approaching a couple different studios here in Toronto. And unfortunately, they tend to want you to intern for a number of years before really being hired on. And I don't really like that aspect of that world. I don't think it's really fair to the young people who are coming out of here and need to earn a living so that they
Eat.
can afford to eat, afford to live in the city that the studios are in. So I don't want to jump ahead too far, but just on that experience, um, I couldn't afford to just move to Toronto and intern at a studio for free. So that's when I started going down the live sound route, because I think that is an area that is great for people who have a technical background. And that's what I did when I was first out of school, both in London, Ontario, as you said, and on the cruise ships.
You got to pay off the bills. I mean, it makes sense once you pay off the bills, you're lighter. You're not running around with this extra anchor almost, hey?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
And it also made sense for you, well, specifically or especially because you went to school for this. You kept on working in your field instead of working outside in a different industry and then also doing music part time, because that's kind of conflicting as well. Uh, uh, how did you find yourself getting that job on the cruise ship, like right out of school, for other people just graduating?
Yeah. Well, this is sometimes in my work I get to go around to the various post-secondary music programs, and do a little bit of a guest lecture on what Music Canada is and what they do. And often there, the young people who are graduating, that's one of the first questions is, how can I get a job out of school? Because you want to, um, you know, leverage your diploma, leverage your degree and your insights and skills, and start working in the field you want. Um, for me, doing the live sound cruise ship thing was pretty natural because I did a bunch of work with the PA shop in London. They do a lot of the live sound gigs around there, and I was kind of doing um, pretty casual part-time work with them just when the big shows would pop up. So I already had some experience in that. And really, when I was at Fanshawe, we had a guest lecture from a fellow who went through my program decades earlier and then went into the cruise ship life. So I was introduced into the idea of being able to go work on a cruise ship, um, at school. And then when I was ready to graduate, I reached out to a recruiting firm for the cruise lines. That's typically how it's done. These are really massive corporations, so they rely on some of these recruiters um, to vet the candidates and make sure that they know the technical background that they're supposed to know for these shows. And so I connected with them, did a couple interviews, and kind of shared what my background is. And then, fortunately, a few weeks later, really, I was placed on the Freedom of the Seas, which at the time was the world's largest cruise ship, and it was based out of Miami.
You set sail. Damn.
Yeah,
That's very cool.
and one of the things I often tell people when I'm telling this story is that on the ground learning. I feel like I learned more in the two contracts that I did on the cruise ships than I did in my 2 years at Fanshawe. It's such a you're literally living and working in that environment, and that's where I picked up a lot of the skills that I still use today, even though I'm not in a technical role right now. Just knowing all that background was helpful.
Yeah, it says a lot. Do as much as you can to be in the environment, like fully. Obviously, finances hinder things, social matters hinder things, everything. Like everyone has a reason, but like do your best to surround yourself either like by the people or just like I'm gonna sit in the corner of this room and I'm gonna watch you do your work if that's okay with you. And that in itself, you're learning, you're taking that in. Before we move on to our next segment, what would you change in the music industry, if anything?
Um, I don't know. That's a tough one. I mean, the music industry is constantly changing. Right? I've been at Music Canada for 11 or 12 years now, and when I came in to join Music Canada, I don't think we had any of the music streaming services actually launched in our territory just yet. And now those streaming platforms are the dominant way that we all listen to music. It's now the biggest revenue generator for the rights holders. So I don't know if I could say something that I would change, just because we're so used to constant change here. That is the only constant in the music industry is change, I think.
Yeah, you're not the only person to say that. I hear that frequently. Okay, all right, that's fair. That's it is constantly changing, and maybe that's what we need to slow it down a bit. Is that good?
I don't know really. I think we are. This is a train that's constantly moving, and we want to be at the same pace of that to get on it and really excel in this competitive environment. So I don't know. I don't think I would say slow down the change.
Doesn't
I
help.
think we have to change with it.
Yeah, I hear that. I hear that. All right, cool. All right, cool. Well, Quentin, that was the basics. We are now going into our second segment called the speed round. It's the speed round. It's the speed round.
Yeah, that was a terrible take.
Okay, Quentin. In the speed round, I've got 20 different questions for you, and you've got less than 3 seconds to answer each of them. If you go past that 3-second mark, you're going to hear a buzzer that sounds like that. No pressure, of course. Afterwards, you can justify any of the questions if you like, and then we move on. Cool?
Okay, I'll try.
What is your favorite activity to do?
For me, it's probably biking. Love mountain biking. Love being on my bike to get around town. I think.
Past 3 seconds, no justifying. Does research show that people's desire for live music is not disappearing?
I have some really good examples of that, actually, that we've done in work with Music Canada.
We'll justify after. Who is an artist that you currently find the most exciting?
Most exciting? I'll have to think on that one.
Who's your all-around favorite person in the world?
That's another tough one. Maybe we'll say my partner.
Nice. Has Canada hit 2 billion songs streamed per week yet?
We are very close.
Ooh.
I think it's coming in a matter of weeks.
Dead or alive, who do you like to have dinner with?
There's an actor called Gary Shandling. Not sure if all of your listeners would be familiar with him, but he did the
less than 3 seconds.
Show.
Less than 3 seconds. Make the first sound that comes to mind.
.
How often do you write articles for music organizations?
Almost on the daily,
Wow.
a couple times a week.
If movie is to watch, then Netflix is too.
Binge.
What's your favorite meal?
Pizza.
Do Canadians view live music venues as economic and cultural lifelines within their communities?
I think for sure, and we've got some good research on that as well.
Dope. What is your favorite city?
Favorite city? I gotta say Toronto.
Adventure or leisure? Which do you prefer?
I would say adventure. Leisure you can do all the time, but adventure, I think it's one of those things that you got to take the opportunity when it arises.
Fair. Music Canada helps curtail piracy and counterfeiting.
That's right. That's always been a big part of what we do.
Ha. Do you have any nicknames?
Most of my college friends will know me as Dickie.
Dickie. The next round is on me, Dickie. What are you having?
On
On
sorry,
me.
say that again.
The next round is on me. What are you having?
And I have to ask you questions?
No. Like, I'm buying you something.
Okay. Well, then I would go with chicken parm.
Nice. Who administers the Gold Platinum Awards program for best-selling records in Canada?
That's an easy one. That's Music Canada.
Dope. Is water wet? Tricky one.
I think it is.
Is this the best interview you've ever had so far?
This is the best one in a while, for sure.
Hey. And can you imagine a world without music?
I couldn't. I think that, would be a very difficult one.
A reckless community for sure. We made it through the speed round, Quentin. Nice.
Great.
We do got a couple that we want to justify. You seemed like you wanted to justify as well. Music Canada helps curtail piracy and counterfeiting. How do they go about doing this? This isn't something that I was very aware of. I'm not sure if that's just me because I'm a little bit under a rock sometimes, but I'm curious.
Yeah, I think that's something that we've always been involved in, and going back a few years now, we were very involved in the drafting of new copyright legislation to give us the tools to shut down some of the big commercial pirates that were out there at the time. The music industry, the piracy in the music industry has evolved, as I said, just like everything is changing. Today, some of the biggest threats in that world tend to be the stream rippers, and those are so we work with our international counterparts to try and shut down some of those sites because really they are profiting off the back of artists, and artists aren't being compensated for their work. So still a big part of what we do.
Yeah, it's critical. It's critical. Thank you for that work. I know it goes a long way. Speed round has come to a conclusion. We are now moving into What's Yo Take? What's your take? Say what your take is. What's your take? Let me hear you say. What's your take? Can't hear you now. What's your take? Hey, okay, what's your take? We're back to open discussion now. No more 3-second rule. I know we didn't like that cap so much, but we're looking for your wisdom, and we've got a little bit of a theme for the episode, which is taking a step back to see the bigger picture of the Canadian music industry, because you've got a very unique perspective. I want to dive into a little bit of Music Canada, a little bit into the labels, big three kind of stuff. And then music cities were quite intriguing that I think a lot of different communities can benefit from. So as an indie artist myself, I'm looking for some insights into the work that happens at Music Canada, specifically the marketplace. What is that like?
Yeah, so just to give your readers some background, or your listeners to give you some background, Music Canada, we're a trade association. We're representative of Canada's major labels. So our members are Sony, Warner, and Universal. We're a partner for our friends in the industry, and we're an advocate for the music community at large. One of the things that we've been talking about recently in regards to the marketplace is a new exciting milestone that we're quickly approaching, which will be 2 billion on-demand audio streams in 1 week, which is such a big number. It's almost hard to comprehend, but that's the scale that we're talking about when we're in the music marketplace today. 2 billion songs every week.
That's super level. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. So we recently had a discussion about this with Canadian Music Week. They had a series called Virtual Voices that we did a panel on last week, and a lot of that discussion was around this 2 billion songs in 1 week. That figure is tracked by MRC data. They were one of the other panelists on that panel, and they're one of the really most comprehensive providers of music industry data around the world. To give a little bit more background on that 2 billion figure, it's streams coming from the licensed on-demand audio streaming services like Spotify or Apple Music or Amazon or Tidal. And part of the reason we're so excited about that is it's a real milestone. It's a new benchmark that shows how much Canadians love and value music. Because as I said, all of those 2 billion streams are coming from licensed platforms, which means that the rights holders are being compensated for it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Critical work. So essentially the artists themselves will benefit from the work that you do because you're making sure that they're being compensated for the work that they put out.
Exactly. We're all about finding ways to improve the music ecosystem and making sure that artists are paid when the music is played.
Is there anything specific that artists should be doing directly with Music Canada, or do you work like for them in the background? Like, do I have to sign up for anything to make sure nothing's being slipped out like that?
I wouldn't say that there's anything in particular that they need to do to benefit. Like a lot of what we do is all about the overall ecosystem, whether that's the anti-piracy stuff or sharing these marketplace stats. It's all like one of the things that we really believe in is that the music industry is an ecosystem, and like any other ecosystem that relies on having a healthy environment. And in the music industry, that's an environment that involves labels, publishers, managers, of course, artists, and lots of other people in the value chain. So that's kind of our approach to it.
Interesting. Okay. And then outside of the almost hitting the $2 billion or $2 billion, 2 billion streams per week here in Canada, are there other kinds of interesting or alarming stats that you could share with us?
Yeah, one that we're just putting out in our newsletter today, as I said, IFPI, our global counterparts, they just released a report today called Engaging with Music. And that is a really in-depth report on how people listen to music, how they discover it, and how they engage with it around the world. So that is it's based on research from, I think, 21 different countries around the world, including Canada. They surveyed a couple of thousand people here, and just to understand how they use music, how they enjoy it. And I think I said earlier, it's all about engagement with streaming right now. More than 3/4 of the respondents in that survey said that they listen to music through the licensed streaming services. We're seeing a lot of growth in terms of time spent listening to music on platforms like the on-demand streaming ones. And it also reinforced the strong attraction of these services to fans because they have a terrific value proposition. You can listen to the music you want without having advertisements in it. If you go for the paid option, you can listen to what you want when you want, and you have access to the catalogs of millions and millions of songs. So almost anything that's been recorded you can find on these platforms now.
Interesting. Okay. So the numbers are doing well for the platforms and streaming. The community is listening to music and they're consuming. But how does this information affect the artists themselves? Like they're learning that more people are listening to music, but they're not necessarily profiting so much more from this increase in growth. How can they benefit from this information?
Well, I think knowing the environment will allow artists to really, focus their efforts in the areas that can most benefit them. So a lot of what we've done over the summer is have some panels and or some webinars with experts. We've also done some work on creating some explainer videos for the various music industry structures in place in Canada, the collectives and things like that. So I think if you're an emerging artist and you are looking to take the next step, it's I think a little bit of work in understanding how people listen to music today will help. A lot of what we've been talking about is work in the metadata sphere. So making sure that you have their you have you make sure that you're credited, and everybody who works on the record gets credited, so that you can collect the royalties when it's being played. And there are some pretty in-depth tools for artists on the various streaming platforms. They really want artists to use them and be able to drill down on the data that comes out of it. So I know that Spotify has a Spotify for Artists platform, and I think the other ones have something similar where when you're uploading your music to these services, you can benefit from the data on who's listening to it. And maybe that can help you plan a tour or invest your marketing dollars in a certain area.
Right. Okay, interesting. There's obviously a lot of work that comes into doing that, especially per platform if you're looking at each of their analytics. So a solution to that can be getting signed to a label. Do you find that with the current modern, I suppose, environments, that we are seeing more artists getting signed or less artists getting signed? What is there a trend happening?
We've seen some research out of the IPI that shows that investment in A&R has kept up, has actually been increasing over the last few years. And I think your listeners probably know what A&R is, all about artists and repertoire. And that is almost like the music industry's R&D, research and development. That's where labels invest money into finding new artists, developing them, and ultimately partnering with them to bring their creative vision to the world and do it in a way that can reach their largest audience.
Interesting. So that's not slowing down. Cool. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about, actually, before I transition to the big three, you said you've been at Music Canada for about 11 to 12 years. It doesn't seem like you're switching it up anytime soon. But with your time having spent over a decade there, what has been your greatest challenge so far?
I might need to think about that one for a bit.
Maybe we visit that after the big three. We talk a little bit about the big three, Sony, Universal, and Warner.
Sure.
Awesome. Can you provide a little bit of insight on them?
Yeah, I mean, they're our members, so they're the ones who really keep the lights on at Music Canada and support our work. They are really technologically advanced, innovative companies. I think record labels today are about as tech-focused as you can get without being an actual tech company. They are so advanced with the listening data and the analytics. They've invested a lot of resources into the staff who know how to distill and leverage all those mountains of data, and the technology to help them do that and help plan the tours and the marketing campaigns. So it's really central to how they do business today.
Interesting. Okay. How would they operate best or how would the upcoming artists manage their time best to pull all of their resources, because they can be so overwhelming because of how much they have going on?
Yeah, I mean, it's always been a competitive environment for an artist to get signed to a major. Probably even more so now because there are thousands of tracks being uploaded to the platforms all the time, and the labels they have some really talented people who can do their A&R work in these virtual environments and see which songs are starting to bubble up and connecting with people, and that tends to be the artist that they sign. We had a label representative on the CMW panel that I spoke to before, and they said that those types of streaming metrics or social engagement can be really important in showing how artists are connecting with people and be a real proof of concept in that this is an artist who's got something to say and people are listening.
Interesting. So does that affect essentially how artists are being discovered? Like, are A&R using Spotify analytics themselves to determine if there's a worthy business?
Yeah, I don't think it's just Spotify either. I think they do a lot of analysis of social metrics and reach and things like that. They really pull in all the data. I mean, it's not like the type of thing where the A&R person is spending the week at the Horseshoe Tavern in Toronto, listening for the next big band. I think typically they're just so advanced now that they're listening worldwide, right? Not just even within our own city or our own borders. These companies, they really are about discovering new artists and helping them bring them to the world because it's such a global business now.
Wow. The focus on music was to reach a global scale, but then it's almost like we're determining your value through the number, but it's how the business works. How else would you measure it? It's quite interesting. Okay. I think I have one question coming in from the back before I move on. If not, yes. Is there a structure to those metrics? For example, streams versus socials versus video analytics. How are they weighed before the A&R makes a decision?
Yeah, I don't think there's any set formula. I think it's about showing like a proof of life concept, right? This is something that is somebody's already out there. They're connecting with fans in a certain way, and they can just see, that this person is popping up on TikTok, right? We've seen a lot of examples over the last year of artists whose song goes viral on TikTok and reaches a whole new audience, and often there can be a bit of a bidding war to sign that artist because they're just gathering so much steam on socials.
So, for example, if this upcoming artist is picking up steam on their socials, don't sign to the first person that comes to you because you don't know what else might be around the corner.
I mean, everybody's got to do their due diligence, but some
Fair.
of these artists are really sought after. Like I think that's the great thing about our business is it's not something that can just be replicated and put onto another artist. When when you hear a great artist and their music connects with fans, or they've got such a engaging personality that some of these young artists are so connected with their fan bases because they're growing up on streaming or on social platforms. It's so exciting. Like I think it's something that you can't automatically just say, well, this worked for this artist, we'll do this and get them to that point. It's artists are so unique that it has to be something unique to them, right?
Right. Okay. I'm not certain if you're the correct or appropriate person to ask this, but how have agreements changed for the artists? Are they still typically or similar to 360 deals, or what's that looking like?
Yeah, we've done I mentioned some of the webinars that we did in the past, and one of them was on contract literacy for artists. I think there has been a big push over the last, I would say, decade plus now, in terms of really simplifying the contracts. They want to get it where everybody's interests are covered in the right way. So one of the ways that we were doing that in this webinar, we had a lawyer on there who has a real strong entertainment background, just to talk about what are the key things that you should do as an artist to make sure that you are covered for when you take it to the next step. So we've got some resources on the Music Canada and the Connect page about how to just get up to speed on contract literacy, right? Because a lot of times that's not the artist world.
Yeah. And so the best way to access those resources is just musiccanada.com.
Yeah, or connectmusic.ca. It was a partnership with Connect, so they're on both sites now.
That's very important. It's very important. Got to make some kind of progress, steady progress. Before I ask you about music cities, I like the idea of talking a little bit more about labels. Artists, to my surprise, I thought I wouldn't have said that the trajectory of people getting signed is still going up, but clearly that's the case. How can an artist from baseline, maybe the top three things, what are the top three things that they could do to make themselves more admirable, or not admirable, more desirable to a label?
I think it's such a unique thing for each artist, but I think just in terms of making sure that you've got your branding all out there in a professional looking way. You've got a website. It doesn't need to be anything um, over the top or whatever, but a place where somebody, whether they're a fan or an industry person, can go and learn about your bio, listen to some of your music, see your links to your socials, and they can go on and see how your how you're interacting with people, number of followers, number of engagements, and all that type of thing. And just for an artist to be really organized in that stuff will really pay dividends, right? It's not just about, and I don't mean just in the marketing side of things, but in some of the, making sure that you've got your publishing and your other royalty streams. You've done the due diligence and got those submitted to the proper collectives. I think that shows a lot of maturity as an artist and is having all those business pieces set out. That would be my advice.
It makes sense. I mean, as we've already made quite clear, labels are no longer in the business of like developing an artist and like sending them off on that trajectory, because that costs a lot of time and effort. They want an established business. So the least you can do is set yourself up for success.
Yeah, and I hope I didn't give that impression, because I think the labels are still very much involved in discovering artists and helping them develop. That's really the crux of the core of what they do.
But not from the ground.
Well, they are generally signing for somebody who's
can eat already,
gotten to a certain level.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we're trying to like get them to that level if they want to try and get signed. Right. No, that's I mean, it's great advice. It's great advice. Do the due diligence. There are a lot of resources. I mean, there are cheap ways to make websites, landing pages, all of that kind of stuff. And if you're really into this, you're gonna have to make it work. I mean, other people have had tough situations and they made it work too. It doesn't mean like it's an excuse. Don't use it as an excuse, right?
Yeah, I think the tools are out there, and there are a lot of resources out to help artists with this stuff as well. I think almost every province in Canada has a provincial music association, and they're really aimed at helping those grassroots levels, right? There's Music Ontario in Ontario, Music BC, Music Nova Scotia, et cetera, et cetera. So those organizations do a lot of skill development and training programs. So if you're a new emerging artist, I'd say check out your provincial association, get up to speed, and take part in some of the webinars or the workshops that they do, because that's a great way to not just learn the skills, but also meet other people in your local music community.
100%. That has helped me. One additional piece of advice I'd recommend to the individuals attending these events: attend and give it your 100%. Don't half-ass it. Don't sit there in like your robe with like the video off. Be there. Make yourself present. It goes a long way. Cool. Music cities. I don't want to spend too much time on it. We are getting near to the end, but I thought that this idea, I've actually never heard of the term before, was quite interesting. I can share a little bit about it, or would you like to talk about what a music city is?
Sure. Why don't you intro it, and then I'll kind of speak to what we do with it.
A music city is itself a community of any size with a vibrant music economy. It begins with artists and musicians. Music cities are home to a broad range of professionals who support these artist entrepreneurs in their career development. They contain spaces for education, rehearsal, recording, and performance, and foster a live scene with an engaged and passionate audience that provides artists with a fertile ground for developing their craft further. Very, very cool. This is the ideal place. A couple of examples are Toronto. We got Melbourne, Bogota, Austin, and Berlin. Big cities. How can we replicate their success in a smaller city like London?
Yeah, and I think London is a great example, because they are, they're not as big as some of the other centers in Canada, but they are really out ahead in terms of setting up the some of the recommendations that we have in the Music Cities reports. So Music Canada has put out a couple reports on being a music city. One's called Mastering a Music City. That's kind of the most in-depth one. And that is really about finding ways for a municipality to do relatively small changes that make a big impact on the ecosystem for music in their city. So those reports are based off a lot of examples of best practices from around the world. Um, as you said, Melbourne, Bogota, Nashville, and London. Just going back to that example, has done a lot of the right things in terms of they've got a music officer at City Hall now with a fellow named Corey Crossman. That's somebody who the industry can go and talk to when they are, having a bit of a issue with the noise bylaw or permits or something like that, right? So it's somebody where that can be a bit of a liaison between the music business community and City Hall, because City Hall is a lot of sometimes bureaucracy to navigate, and so having somebody who's um, often from the music industry, knows our world, and can transit, and
It's very critical.
that can be a big help.
Yes.
And you're seeing the benefits of that in London because it was only a few years back when the Junos were hosted in London. The CCMAs were there a few years ago, and now we're coming back this November. So they've really taken the Music City's ball and ran with it.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
they're getting benefits of it.
It's very true. I'm experiencing it firsthand. You can also find out more resources on how to do this at musiccanada.com. I saw there was a link there, so that'll be in the show notes too. Ooh, we're almost there. We're almost there. We're jumping into our final segment. This one is called Clear the Air.
Wait, stop recording. Cut.
Okay, Quentin, we've got two more questions for you. The first one is from one of our fans. His name is Jelly. We call our fans SmArtist now. But yeah, his video is here. Let me play that for you.
Hey Quentin, I'm Jelly. My question is, what are events going to look like in the future?
Nice and simple question.
Yeah, I guess that's live events, right?
Ideally.
I think we're all going to be finding that out. We're in the process of finding it out right now. We're seeing some tours starting to get booked up again. There's been some that have been announced and then had to step back because of the COVID situation. I think it's something that we all need to be really fluid over. I think one of the things we're seeing is hybrid events where there's a live component and then there's a stream component. I think that's going to be exciting to see where that goes. And then, kind of as I said with the research, there's great things about these live streams. Some of them are really good sounding, really high quality production, but it's hard to have the magic of being in a room together with like-minded people and hearing that music live together. So I think that's something we'll all be figuring out ourselves as we go along in it.
Have you come across anyone talking about virtual reality VR performances?
I do hear about that all the time. I think it seems like every year there's a new example of it, whether that's, the Tupac,
The holograms.
the augmented reality stuff. Some really cool things there. I don't know all about it, but there's a lot of very cool tech that goes into it.
Yeah.
And excited to see it at a show sometime soon.
Yeah, curious to see how that unfolds. All right, okay, cool. Big shout out to Jelly. So big shout out to Jelly for asking that question. Thank you for asking that question. Thank you for your response, Quentin. Our next question is coming from the back. This is Grumpy Sound Guy. What is your question?
So the idea of therapy, I'm really not very behind that, but can you tell us about the Canadian Music Therapy Fund, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to share that. So I've recently joined the board of Music Therapy Fund, Canadian Music Therapy Fund. And that is a registered charity that exists to create access to music therapy for Canadians who need it most. If you're not familiar with it, the fund brings music therapy and music therapists to rural, urban, and remote communities from coast to coast. And they have a lot of really innovative programs and research projects. Everything from music therapy programs for young people who may be on the autism spectrum, older folks living with Alzheimer's, people who may be challenged by anxiety or depression, or they're rehabilitating speech or motor skills. There's a lot of different ways that music is used in these applications, and it's exciting. I mean, I know it's cliche But I really do believe that music has the power to change the world, and music therapy is a perfect example of that.
100%, 100%. I know that therapy itself isn't very, I guess, openly accepted for some reason. I'm all for it. But I think the idea of doing so through music will accelerate that acceptance. Although music therapy is probably a newer science, isn't is it not? Like it's just less
Well,
in this culture, I suppose.
it's a very there's a lot of accreditation that goes into becoming a music therapist. These are
Uh,
people who study for years to do it, and so they're really well trained. Um, so yeah, that's the exciting part about it. I do want to give one plug. If anybody out there is listening who would like to support the Canadian Music Therapy Fund, next week we're going to be holding a benefit event called Undone, a night of lyrics and laughter, and that's a hybrid live stream music and stand-up comedy show taking place on October 28th at the Transact Club.
oh, very nice, very nice. And if there are events in the future, is that all on where can they find those?
Yeah, I think visit musictherapy.ca to learn more about the fund. Typically, we do a couple of different events throughout the year, which are really about raising funds and raising awareness about the importance of music therapy.
Perfect, perfect. I love that. Quentin, do you have any final words?
No, I think that's about it. Thanks for having me. This is a really exciting podcast, and I think it's really great that you are putting out product that is really about uh, young people joining the music industry, whether that's as an artist or as an industry professional or a technical role, perhaps. So that's really good. Thanks for putting out these resources and having me in for a conversation.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for the compliments. That is the very end of our show. Quentin Burgess, SmArtist. If you want to hit me up or connect with other listeners that have like-minded aspirations, check us out at our Facebook group. It's a free Facebook group, goproduce.ca/groups. That's all in the show notes. I'm going to make sure you have that information. My name is Big Lou. I want to see you there. This is Go Produce. We out.